Test, test. 1, 2, 3.
We're ready to begin? Perfect. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's City Council regular meeting for Monday, October 16th. We have one study session item for tonight. We have the Director of Utilities and South Platte Renew, Pieter van Wright, and Deputy Director of Utilities, Business Services Engineer Sarah Stone here to discuss the Big Dry Creek update. Good evening, Director.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Good evening. So we're here tonight to present a change in strategy around Big Dry Creek. So if you recall, Big Dry Creek is a project that's been on our capital list for several years now. It's one that we've budgeted and spent some time investing to continue to move forward. And as things have evolved for the utility over the last few years, we believe that there's probably a different strategy that we should be taking with this project. And so we're going to go through that tonight. So what we'll cover is the history of how we got to where we are today, what was the inception of Big Dry Creek as a project, some of those project conditions that have changed, costs associated with that, aspects of the water quality that are changing some of the drivers, and then ultimately coming forward with a recommendation that we would present to council for the moving forward with this project. So if we go to a timeline, so in 2013, the city of Englewood reached a global settlement with the Denver Water. And so Denver Water and Englewood often for several decades fought in water court over water rights. And in 2013, there was a negotiated, it's almost like a settlement to end all the fighting in the water court cases. And frankly, since then, the city and Denver Water have actually worked very well together. As part of that, Denver Water agreed to pay $600,000 to the city of Englewood, and as part of that overall settlement in those cases. In 2017, the city decided to apply that to the Big Dry Creek Diversion Project because there was a water quality improvement at the time that made sense for the utility associated with that project. So preliminary design was done in 2017. Phase 1 construction plans were done in August of 2017. What's critical in this was a water decrease since it was impacting some of the water on Big Dry Creek. That came in 2017. Phase 1 construction occurred in 2018. And at that point in time, the Phase 1 construction ended, and then the project sat dormant for a couple years. And then in 2020, we re-engaged that project to get it moving forward. That coincided with getting it into the capital plan and some of the rate modeling and rate setting that we did around the investment in the utility as a whole. In 2021, we acquired easements that were required for this project. We had to go through a process to secure easements for the pipeline and the vaults at either end. We also went through and did completed 95% civil plans for this. So this is the civil engineering aspect of the project for Phase 2, and did some water quality sampling. Then we brought in a contractor to do a construction evaluation to make sure that what we were doing was the most cost-effective way of executing this project, the Phase 2 of this project to get the best benefit out of that project. We also had permits with the Army Corps of Engineers that we went through and secured and got those permits re-secured and reissued. And then we started a process on the electrical design. And the electrical design, when this project was originally conceived, changed pretty significantly as part of that decree process and that permitting process. And what changed was, when this was originally conceived as a project, it was set up to be a manual operation system. And what was required out of those permits in that decree was that it was fully automated. So once you do a fully automated system, you have to have that connection to an automated dashboard, and you have to have a whole lot more electronics that go into operating to ensure that the operation happens automatically and we're not relying on an operator to go out and manually turn a valve. We then, in March of 2023, we then procured pre-construction services with a contractor, because this was another project that we were using the CMGC model on. And as part of that, we were able to develop a 60% cost estimate by April. And essentially that's when we started to look at, maybe this is something we need to reconsider. So if you look at the costs, at the time that we started re-engaging this project in 2021, and then the costs in 2023, by 2020, all that work that had been done in phase one was about $615,000. We, in the time since then, have spent about $212,000 furthering the civil design, doing the permitting, acquiring those permits, and going through that process. You can see the aspects that were constructed in phase one. A lot of that was a timing issue. So there's a pipeline associated with this, and there was a regional bike path that was going in. And the thought at the time, which was a good thought, was to put the pipe in before putting a concrete path over the top of it, and then, at a later date coming in and removing that, which is more costly. So getting the pipe in the ground and then capped was basically essentially what we did in phase one. That was really around timing. You can see from a construction plan perspective, there was a 30% design on the civil, and there was essentially a 0% design on electrical. We've advanced those over the past few years to 90% on civil and 60% on electrical. And then the fourth line there is the one that really started to cause us to think about how we need to look at this project. So this has been budgeted in the CIP since 2020 at about $750,000. That's what we assumed based on our cursory level estimating at the capital planning level, based on what we thought was required for the project at the time. As we've advanced the design, we've realized that there is far more involved, and that contractor estimate has come in between $2.86 million and $3.68 million more for this project. And that kind of money is significantly more than what we had planned in our capital plan. And so we're here today to talk about our recommendation as it relates to this project. You can see the operation went from manual to automated, and then this is probably one of the other major changes that occurred from 2020 to today, the most significant of which is the city ditch piping project. So at the time that Big Dry Creek was conceived back in 2017, there was not a city ditch piping project. There was not a focus on moving the source water, or utilizing the source water from Chatfield more significantly through a fully piped system from Chatfield to the Allen plant. So in 2017, 2020, that was not even a project that was on the radar. Since we've been working on since we've been working on that capital plan and trying to address taste, odor, and hardness, we've determined that project is actually going to have the most significant impact, most specifically on hardness, which is also partly what Big Dry Creek was trying to accomplish. Since then, we've also gone through every process of the Allen water treatment plant and done optimization, added some improvements. We're continuing to add more improvements to address taste, odor, and hardness. We did a piloting of ozone treatment to help knock down some of the taste and the odor issues. And so we're working within the systems that we already have constructed and are investing heavily in that connection from Chatfield to the Allen plant, because the source water at Chatfield is so much better than at Union Avenue. So to date, you can see that breakdown in costs. So that 615,000, you can see where the money was spent. 400,000 of it was in construction, and we did purchase the pneumatic weir. That's about a $25,000 purchase. That's been essentially been stored outside for several years. So our concern is that because of the way it was stored for many years, that it's possible that may not even be a functional element anymore. We don't know that for sure, but we've had trouble getting Obermeyer to help us evaluate the integrity of it. So there's some pre-purchase in there that might be lost in terms of an investment. Final design, you can see, was another 100,000. We spent some money on easement acquisitions, which is a property right, which we needed for this, so that's a good investment in this project. But that $213,000 additional has been money that we've been spending to advance the project that helped brought us to this point of understanding that maybe this isn't the right project right now. You see estimated cost remaining. The big one here is the civil construction is somewhere between 1.8 and 2.4. And even if that comes down a little bit, it's not gonna come down to 750,000. The electrical construction, which was a big element that wasn't even considered initially, we estimate between 1 and 1.2 million. And then you can see all of that totals up to 3.1 to almost $4 million to complete this project. We'll shift a little bit to water quality. So at the time that this was being evaluated, there was a connection between Big Dry Creek runoff and hardness, and when the plant would see large runoff events from Big Dry Creek, it would really create a problem for the Allen plant. What we've done is we've done a lot of research and collecting data to figure out, is Big Dry Creek what's dominating that issue, or is it really just the fact that the South Platte has a lot of hard water in it because of all that urbanization that flows into the South Platte during large rain events. And you can see with these graphs, essentially Big Dry Creek is that higher hardness line, the green line, which does show that Big Dry Creek does contribute a significant amount of hardness when there's a lot of runoff coming from there. But what the lower set of lines actually shows is that the water quality at finished water, which is that dark green line, actually tracks very closely with the Union Ave pump station. So even when there is a significant wash coming down Big Dry Creek, it's not causing this massive increase in hardness that I think was the original thought prior to collecting this really specific data in these points. And while Big Dry Creek does have an impact from hardness, it's not a dominating impact because the main stem of the Platte is just so much more of a significant flow. And so if you think about that, the main point of one of the main drivers for the project was to improve hardness as Big Dry Creek events were coming. But what this data shows is that it wasn't really having that big of an effect overall anyways. There may have been a really small localized time frame effect, but as you're thinking about what's the value that we're deriving from a project, especially now that we're talking about $3 or $4 million to finish this project, we didn't see that. We're concerned that the benefit isn't worth the investment right now. Some other considerations, we talked about city ditch piping. We've done a lot of process improvements. We've done a lot of dredging. And over the last couple of years, we've dredged a lot out of the South Pond. There's definitely something that those solids are contributing as it relates to taste, odor, and hardness in the way those two ponds operate, the South Pond and the North Pond. And we're working through that. We're in the process right now of replacing our belt filter press with a centrifuge, which will help us take solids out year round in a much more efficient way, much more often than the seasonality method that we've been using for years. This project wasn't actually one that we incorporated into our WIFIA funding, so this would be fully funded out of rates, which, if you remember WIFIA projects, they're 50% funded by WIFIA and 50% by rates, and so this would eat up a lot of that matching fund for WIFIA projects because we'd have to invest so much from that rate source. There was an aspect of this project, and this is part of the decree, that was actually hydropower, so it's called micro hydro. So it's this micro renewable energy type of approach where you put a small little turbine in and the water that flows through spins a little generator, and what it was designed to do was power the lights at the pump station, so it's not a massive influx of power. It was just more of a method for us to be able to get the decree. It was part of the decree. There was a benefit associated with that micro hydro. And one of the other things that really has become more and more of an issue in recent years is that permanent impact on a water of the U.S. So this would be a weir that goes all the way across across Big Dry Creek, which is a physical structure that could, that's more complicated because of the fact that you have a main stem of a tributary to the South Platte that now right before has this weir that can be inflated or not. So that is more challenging to work with than maybe was originally considered. So it sounds like we shouldn't do this project, and that's not exactly what we're saying. What we're saying is we don't think it's the right project to do right now. However, there's an aspect of this project that is important for us, and it's from our water rights perspective. So there's a water right associated with this. You can see it's a non-consumptive hydropower, which is that micro hydro. But there's an emergency consumptive use piece of this that is actually a water supply component that we want to make sure that we maintain in our portfolio going forward. There's an aspect to water rights they're called diligence hearings. So they happen every 6 years. And so when you have a conditional water right, which the city has many conditional water rights out there, in order to prevent speculative water rights or speculative locking up of water rights, what the water court does is it evaluates conditional water rights every 6 years to make sure that you as an entity are advancing work to perfect the water rights. That's what happens when it becomes a fully it's a perfected water right. So it's no longer conditional. It's a defined water right. You can have a conditional water right for many, many, many years. Every 6 years, what an entity with a conditional water right needs to do is show some kind of an investment in advancing that water right towards perfection, and that can take decades. The $200,000 that we've spent in the last 3 years investing in the advancement of this project meets that requirement to continue to hold the conditional water right for the next 6 years. We just had the diligence hearing on this water right just a month ago, so the timing was actually really good. So that investment of that money is important because it maintains that water right in a conditional nature. And so over time, over the next 6 years, we will still be making investments to advance this project. What we believe, though, is from a timing perspective and a budget, that the $3 or $4 million more that it's going to take to complete this project should probably go to a higher priority within the system right now than this project right now, especially considering the main driver that is that taste, odor, and hardness, which City Ditch piping project should help address even more globally than just on Big Dry Creek. So what it means is our recommendation is to retime this project, is to shelve the advancement of the construction on this project right now and continue to do the efforts to perfect that water right, to meet those diligence case hearings every 6. So we'll have another one in 6 years on this water right. And then use that $3 or $4 million to address more significant system needs, whether it be at the Allen plant, whether it be within the transmission mains and the distribution system. We've talked about that Union Ave pipe that has so many line breaks in it. We have unlined 4-inch pipe within our system that really we should be getting out of the system because as it corrodes, it really reduces the flow rate. That would allow us to remove the $750,000 that's been budgeted, not have to find 2.6 to 3.6 million, or 2 to 3 million more to fund the project fully. And then what we'll do in the meantime is we can be more proactive about manually tracking the water quality that's coming down Big Dry Creek. And when we're seeing a spike, we can change the blend of how we're putting what water we're using to put into the plant, especially considering the completion of the the city ditch project. We'll have much more flexibility to fully move to city ditch year-round as opposed to being fully reliant on Union Ave. And so we also want to maintain the permits on this, which we would continue to do over time because we don't want to lose those permits. So it's not a matter of this project goes away. It's a matter of we think there's higher priorities for the money right now. And once we get to the point where this moves back into a prioritization where the value derived from the project is timed such that investment of money makes sense for the project. So we've had this project on our capital plan for the last 3 years. We've talked about this project both publicly in this meeting. There's a lot of questions about this project. And I think this falls into the concept of the sunk cost fallacy, which is you get so invested in your project that you continue to make decisions on the project because you've invested so much time and money and effort into the project. And so that clouds your objective judgment utilizing data to realize, is this really the right project to do right now? And so that's why we're bringing it to the council. We brought it to Water Sewer Board last week, and the recommendation from them was to also bring it to council for discussion. There's no action on this other than recognizing that as we move forward with our capital plan, we'll retime the investment in this project and use the money somewhere else.
Director, thank you very much for the presentation. Any questions for members of council? Go ahead, Member Anderson.
Excuse my voice tonight. I'm a little weak from having a cold recently. But my question is about the water decree. So the water decree is a conditional water right, and it looks like in this case, it's only for non-consumptive use for that 5 CFS for hydropower. Am I understanding that correctly?
There's an emergency consumptive use piece of it as
Okay.
well. So you do have the hydropower piece, but there is also a piece that we could use for consumptive use in an emergency situation, which when you're thinking about water rights, we're not thinking in the 10-year time frame. We're thinking in the 50 to 80-year time frame. So we don't know
Okay.
if that could be something that, 50 or 80 years from now, because we have it. Anytime you have a water right that you've got in a conditional state, it makes sense to continue to work towards perfection of that right, because we don't know what the pressures are going to be 50 or 80 years from now. And we don't want to lose any aspect of our water rights portfolio that we think could have value
So-
in the future.
What would constitute an emergency use?
I'm going to have to defer to,
Water treatment plant operator determines that we have an emergency with our.
would you like to actually, I'm going to turn this over to Adam Marquez, who's been doing a lot of the technical background on this. He's a project manager in our utilities department, and so I'm going to turn it over to Adam to answer that question.
Good evening, Mr. Marquez. Go ahead.
Good evening, thank you. Essentially, the way the decree reads is that our water treatment plant operator actually is able to determine what he defines as an emergency with his raw water supply. So there could be an instance where one of our raw water supplies is so adversely impacted by a water quality event that there could be a need to use the emergency.
And the 5 cubic feet per second, how does that compare to our overall water needs?
I think it would be about 20% of our average plant intake. So you
Okay.
have to piece that together with some other raw water source.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, my thought was why, if it's such a low power, power generation, and if it's only, what's the use in maintaining it if it's just a small power generation? But that makes more sense if there's an emergency consumptive use to it.
Member
Thank you.
Kolnick.
So can you help me understand what would, say you retime this project and you pick it up down the road, what's going to be the most likely reason that the project comes back to life? Is it because there's a greater need for higher flow rates within the city, or is it because water quality, we're going back and forth and we're saying, we're looking at a long-term trend and we're saying, I guess what we did with Big City Ditch didn't make the impact we want. Let's go back to this project and see if we can we do that?
Yeah, I think partly what we're trying to do is we're trying to predict a future that we don't necessarily know. And what this does is by maintaining, so we've put money into this project. We put money into getting the water right. We've put money into to getting the project to where it is today. The cost to continue to maintain it from a diligence perspective is far less than constructing the project on its own. So the scenario that comes up in the future could be anything like that. It could be a matter of maybe we're not seeing the effect that we thought we were going to see out of City Ditch, and that we get more data that shows that Big Dry Creek at a certain time of year really would benefit from this kind of a project. I think as we gain more data of how the system operates when we make this change from so dominantly reliant on Union Ave to more dominantly reliant on City Ditch, that we'll be able to then use that information to inform how we then move forward on Big Dry Creek from a timing perspective. But I don't think we have enough information right now to say this is a project that we should abandon, because that ability for our operator to see that there's an emergency where we need to pull directly from Big Dry Creek is a really good resiliency aspect to our water rights portfolio. So if, maybe there's some blowout in the piping system at City Ditch that causes it to go down, coupled with a pump failure at the Union Ave pump station or something where reliant on this influent, or maybe it wouldn't be pump failure, but something happens on the Platte where that diversion directly to the Union Ave, there might be a scenario that maybe is low likelihood today, but 20 or 30 years from now, maybe becomes more frequent to the point where having this as a resiliency option in our water rights portfolio is a good investment.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what I'm hearing you say is that this project, Big Dry Creek in general, is a really important resiliency component to our water system. It may be a project that's picked up for water quality reasons in the future, but if nothing else, it'll probably just be something that is done to meet growing population or water demands.
Yeah, I would, and not just
at the very least.
Yeah, part of what we look at too is, we're looking at, drought scenarios. We're looking at how, climate change could be potentially affecting runoff regime, how runoff flows down from the snowpack. We're trying to develop a cone of confidence in our water rights portfolio 50, 80 years from now that predicts what could potentially impact us from a supply and resiliency perspective. So again, while it may not be much of a driver today, there could be a point in time that, 30 years from now, an operator is saying, hey, we're experiencing a problem, we have an emergency, we need to pull directly. I would foresee someday in the future us building more of a more significant Big Dry Creek diversion that does have a water quality component. So we have the building blocks for that with this project.
Member Russell?
Thank you. So going back to 2013, we settled a lawsuit with Denver for the $600,000 because of the taste and odor. Is that correct? The
Right.
water hardness?
My understanding is more hardness. Hardness was the significant driver for this project because Big Dry Creek water spikes in hardness, especially when you have large runoff events.
So how is bypassing or not moving forward on this? I mean, the holding ponds, that water came from a lot of it Big Dry Creek anyway, right? And the dredging of it, so there still could be hard water components there. Does it have anything to do with that?
No, I think the water that's in the south pond and the north pond right now comes from water that flows down City Ditch during irrigation season, which is April to November, or water that's directly pumped from the Platte up to it at the Union Ave. So Big Dry Creek is a tributary to the Platte, but if you think about the Platte, the flow is much bigger than Big Dry Creek. And so when we pull water from, let me go back a couple slides. I'm going to go back to so this is what helped us somewhat figure this out. So Big Dry Creek does have a hardness issue, and you can see it. It's very hard water. But what we were finding was that even though it's really hard, at the time that we have spiking events from it, the South Platte is experiencing a runoff event that's got a lot of hardness in it, and that's really what's dominating the amount of water flowing into Big Dry Creek, or from Big Dry Creek into the Platte at that point in time, gets basically absorbed up into that main stem flow, and that's what's really coming into the Union Ave pump station. What changes this for us is that focus on piping City Ditch, because our intention is that with piping City Ditch, that we will have that direct connection from Chatfield, which has much lower hardness numbers, to the Allen plant in a fully piped system, so that we can run that more often, year-round essentially. So we're not just running it from April to November, we're running it year-round because we have Wrights that we can pull down through it during those winter months. And so now you've just taken this whole thing right off the table, because we've gone completely upstream of all the urbanization of the South Metro area. We've gone upstream of the Marcy Gulch wastewater treatment plant, which is the wastewater treatment plant for Highlands Ranch that discharges just below the Chatfield Dam. And so by using this money to invest in that City Ditch project, we're actually creating a circumstance where any benefit from this is marginal right now, because our intention is to operate the system predominantly off of City Ditch, because the hardness at Chatfield is so much lower than it is at the main stem.
So how do we know, we have priority water rights off the Platte, but that we'll be taking now from Chatfield Reservoir then at the intake, at our intake valve, is that correct?
Yeah, because our rights allow us to take them there. So we can take them in either location, and because we'll pipe the system, we'll be able to take them there during periods of the year when we historically haven't taken them, because of the fact that there's in the winter it's harder to run an open ditch, and once you have a buried pipe system, you can run it through the winter without issue. So the water rights allow us the ability to take in both those locations.
So do we know how much water we can take out of the city, out of that pipe? Are we gonna be getting all that we could take anyway, if it came down the Platte River?
We're designing it to meet not just our peak needs in the summer, but also we have a number of contract users that we have to deliver water to, and then Denver Water still retains the right to have us flow water to any new user that they may have. And so we are building that system to accommodate that flow rate. There's a set of flow regimes that we're trying to ensure that the system will accommodate long-term, and the benefit of a pipe system is you can actually pressurize it, so you can flow it under pressure.
Okay, so if we have water an emergency, if most of our water is going to be coming directly out of Chatfield Reservoir, that probably would cut our water supply substantially anyway. If, by having to divert back,
You mean having to divert from Big Dry Creek?
right?
So I think we're not going to abandon the Union Ave pump station. I think what one of my concerns since I've been with utilities is that we have so many systems that are singular, and so there's not a backup system. So right now, if we lose the Union Ave pump station for some reason, maybe it gets struck by lightning and there's a massive electrical failure or something like that, if we lose that, we don't have City Ditch set up right now to be the full supply of water in January. What City Ditch piping project allows us to do is to have two systems. So we have the City Ditch system and we have the Union Ave system. So if for some reason we need to take one down for maintenance, we can run the other one. If we need to take the other one down, we can run, so it gives us a system resiliency and a system redundancy that's, I think is important for our longer term, just the stability of our systems long term. We're trying to find backup systems to these things that if you have a catastrophic failure, we're in trouble. I think this is partly the Denver Interconnects is another project that we're working on right now. That's a really good emergency backup system in case something catastrophically goes wrong with the system.
Okay, thank you. That helps.
Member Anderson, do you mind if I go to Member Woodward first and then?
Please do.
Go ahead, Member Woodward.
Thank you for your presentation. Question for you. As I recall at the Water Board meeting, it was mentioned that at the plant, the water treatment, you had a belief that we could handle the hardness, taste, and odor issues through treatment. So part of that diversion, or what we are looking at coming out of Big Dry Creek, may not be as big an issue as we thought. Is
Yeah, and
that
I think,
correct?
so there's a couple aspects of that. And so the big part of how we're handling that is where we're drawing our source water supply, which is City Ditch piping project. So that's the biggest change from 2020 to today from an overall strategy from a source water supply that substantially impacts and improves hardness most specifically. On a taste and odor, from a taste and odor perspective, we're finding that the ponds and the way that the ponds have been allowed to accumulate solids for years has created more of our taste and odor issues. And so we're working to clean out those ponds, clean the algae and the biomass that creates the issues, and then also operate it in a way that if we do have, in the summer you get spikes in these things, no matter whether it's us or it's Denver Water or it's anybody else, we end up with these spikes. And so there are times when we can avoid the utilization of the ponds and use direct connect from Union Avenue or City Ditch to be able to mitigate any taste and odor effect that we might be experiencing. So what we're realizing through really dissecting the systems and taking that data to help inform how we operate those systems is that there's a lot of work we can do with the systems as they are right now to help improve taste, odor, and hardness. And we've been actually doing that for the last 9 to 12 months. Ideally, we'll see that somewhat reflected in our annual customer survey once we start seeing those results. Is we're hearing less. We're tracking less complaints about taste, odor, and hardness. We don't think we have it fixed, but we think some of these changes in operation have caused that to go down. Ultimately, what we want to minimize through creating efficiency in those systems and optimizing those systems is any additional capital investment in something like a softening system or something like that. So if we can drive down the hardness because we changed the source water location to the point where now we're only left with a small amount of hardness, additional hardness that we may want to take care of, that would be something that we would look at down the road as potentially add a small softening, almost like a polishing aspect to the plant, as opposed to trying to do softening for a hardness that you see on the screen is 600 or 700. So there's a strategy and a timing of how we're investing the money to ensure that we get the most benefit from the simplest solutions. And one of the simplest solutions you can put in is a gravity pipe, because you bury it and it typically flows for 80 or 100 years. You build a pump station or you build a softening system, and those require ongoing maintenance and ongoing reinvestment. So did that help answer your question?
It does.
Okay.
Thank you.
Member Anderson?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up with something we discussed with Water and Sewer Board, because I thought it'd be beneficial for council and the public. When we look at this graph here, it's pretty clear to me that with the data we now have, that this project would have very, very minimal to almost no impact on the hardness of the water going into the water plant. What was going on with the water department at the time that made this look like a good idea, and how have we changed so that we know that something like this is not likely to happen again?
Sure, and thank you for bringing that up. I think the thing to reiterate is back in 2013 when this was conceived as a project, 2017 when it was invested, nobody did anything wrong. This isn't the kind of thing where we go back and say, well, that was a terrible idea to do that. At the time, it made the most sense based on the capacity within the utility and based on the funding capacity of the utility and based on the, at that point in time, there wasn't a fully defined engineering division within the utilities department that executes studies, does this kind of data collection, utilizes that data collection to build capital plan, and ultimately implements a capital plan that I think next year's capital plan, if you count lead service lines, is approaching $30 million. You can't do that with one or two staff that are trying to look at development review, and at the time they were actually managing the MS4. There's only so much capacity that can be done at the time if you don't have the staffing to be able to execute it. That's changed in the last 3 years. So we now have much more a much more substantial operations structure. We've brought in a lot of expertise that maybe was here 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, but is no longer here, that we were struggling from an operations perspective. We've built a whole engineering division so that we can execute these designs and collect data to help make sure that our investments that we are making are timed right and are the right investments. And that's an evolution that has occurred in the last 3 years that gives us this information, because we have staff to actually ask the question and go out and look for this information and use our consultants to answer the questions that maybe before weren't being asked because there just wasn't capacity to be able to ask them, because all they're trying to do is keep the plant running and make sure that they're keeping up with development reviews. Does that get it?
That's good, thank you.
Okay.
Member Noonan-Camp?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for bringing this to us. I appreciate the diligence to ensure that we're spending taxpayer resources and ratepayer dollars on the most important projects that are actually going to improve the water for those who drink it and use it every day. And I think it's important that we consistently reevaluate if we're on track to succeed in that mission or not. And I agree with you on the sunk cost fallacy. That said, I believe you mentioned that we had pre-purchased some equipment. We called it a lost investment. If we make this change and delay this project, are there any other concerns around lost investments, and is there anything we can do to mitigate any of that while we're in this delayed period?
So I think so the other pieces are the buried pipe. So it's HDPE pipe that, as long as, someone doesn't drill a utility through it or bore a utility through it or something like that, as long as there's not some kind of a damage that's done because of work around it, you can have those sit there for decades, and then when we decide to complete the project, you can fire it right up and everything should work, because HDPE is pretty resilient material as long as it's not being disturbed. The design work that we've done is not lost. It's good information. It's not the civil structures that we've done design on, those aren't gonna change substantially between now and 20 years unless there's some major site condition change that changes. The electrical work, we really did enough to figure out that there was a lot of electrical work there, so I don't know that it's information that we can build upon. But I think when you look at the amount that we've spent in phase one, there's not a lot that's lost there. And when you look at what we've done in phase two, one of the biggest things was $40,000 to secure the easement. And the easement's an important thing long-term to have for the project functionality into the future. The one that's kind of a shame is the weir. We don't know that it doesn't work, but oftentimes when you store things outside for many, many years, they tend to degrade just because of the UV, effect on systems. So it would have been nice if 8 years ago that was put in or 7 or 8 years ago that was put inside. But it's a really actually a low cost, especially for this type of project. To me, that's the only thing that I can think of that's really significant in a loss. Everything else I think is usable into the future.
That's really helpful. I appreciate it. And then just my last question is, as we drive for some more strategic focus and we look at the projects that we think will have the most impact on the customers, do you see this changing any of the timeline for City Ditch? With focus, will this accelerate that at all, or do you think that will continue on the same timeline we're on?
No, I think what this does is it helps ensure the completion of City Ditch. Because if we had to take $3.6 million of rate money and put it towards this project, that directly takes it away from City Ditch, because City Ditch piping project is also not a WIFIA project. And so I'd much rather use that money towards, and I think it's more effective for us to use that money to ensure that the City Ditch project gets completed, because like with any construction project that you see these days, it seems like the engineer's estimate and our original estimates are lower than what construction's coming in. And so I'm concerned that if we direct a significant amount of money towards towards this project, that it could impact how well we can execute City Ditch. And I think that is the priority project for us, not just from the taste and odor and hardness perspective, but really from a resiliency and an operations perspective.
Great, thanks.
Any further questions for members of council? Don't see any. Director Van Wright, thank you very much for the presentation tonight and the reasoning for postponement of the Big Dry Creek project. So thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
All right, everyone, we're going to take a short break, about 10 minutes. We'll reconvene here at the top of the hour. Thank you.
Tried to keep it short.
All right, thank you very much, everyone. We are now back. I call this meeting to order. If you're able to do so, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. City Clerk, if you could please take roll call.
Member Anderson,
Present.
Member Noonenkamp,
Present.
Member Russell,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Present.
Member Kolnick,
Present.
Member Woodward,
Present.
Mayor Sierra.
Present.
Let the record show all are present.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5. This is minutes from the regular city council meeting of October 2nd. Any changes that we need to make? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes from the October 2nd meeting?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Kolnick,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 6. This is recognition of South Platte Renew for receipt of 5 awards in 2023. We have the Director of South Platte Renew, Pieter Van Rij, as well as the Deputy Director of Engineering, Jamie Sofoco, here to accept their recognition. So just a few items of note. So in 2023, South Platte Renew received a total of 5 awards, underscoring the department's commitment to industry leadership, excellence, and innovation. The noteworthy achievements are the National Association of Clear Water Agencies honored SPR as the recipient of the Peak Performance Award for maintaining 14 years of permit compliance. The NACWA also recognized South Platte Renew with the Water Resources Utility of the Future Award for its dedication to safety through the implementation of SPR SAFE and the development of the Energy Management Master Plan. The Rocky Mountain Water Environmental Association presented SPR with the Sustainability Award in recognition of their work on the Energy Management Master Plan and the continued optimization of the pipeline injection system. SPR received the Friends of RMWEA Award, highlighting the organization's enduring support and active involvement, which have contributed to the success of the RMWEA. Engineering News Record Mountain States awarded the best project in the water environmental category to SPR for its exceptional completion of the chemical phosphorus and ultraviolet disinfection project. These accolades reflected SPR's exceptional dedication and outstanding contributions across various domains, from compliance and safety to project excellence. I do now want to invite SPR Director Pieter Van Rij, as well as Deputy Director Sofoco, to join me at the dais to receive their certificate. I know, Director, I asked you if you had any words to say, but I know we just had you up here for about an hour, so anything you want to add?
Do we have that kind of time? No. I think the thing that I would like to highlight is, so we have 86, right now about 80 dedicated professionals, SPR, that they love what they do at the wastewater plant. And so that might seem counterintuitive, but I think these awards that you're seeing in the industry and the recognition is really illustrates how wastewater can be a career option that's a very rewarding career, that's something that has such a positive impact on our communities. But the reason we're winning these awards is because of the people that work at SPR. They are dedicated professionals. They love what they do. They love these communities that they serve, and it's nice when we see accolades like this. So this is really because of their efforts.
Thank you very much for that, Director. We'll take a quick picture, and we have the city manager taking our picture.
Smiles in the background. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
All right, thank you, everyone. We're now moving on to agenda item 7. This is recognition of scheduled public comment. The deadline to sign up to speak for scheduled public comment is Wednesday by 5 p.m. prior to the meeting through the city clerk's office. This is an opportunity for the public to address city council. Excuse me. There is an expectation that the presentation will be conducted in a respectful manner. Council may ask questions for clarification, but there will not be any dialogue, and please limit your presentation to 5 minutes. Also, I do want to state that due to our ethics policy, we will not be receiving any gifts tonight, so just want to make sure that that's clear for this evening. And no gifts. Due to our ethics policy, we're not allowed to receive any gifts, so. And tonight, I think we have Member Kolnick giving response to public comment. And up first is Ann Dickerson, an Englewood resident, here to address council. Good evening, Ms. Dickerson. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Ann Dickerson, Bates Logan. Laws, the founders said, should be few, simple, easy to understand, and ensure the maximum liberty so that we all want to obey them. We have preeminent rights. The right to life is the fundamental right from which all other rights are derived, and the right to property is their only implementation. We have a right to our property and a property in our rights. Our municipal code is inconsistent, contradictory, and unconstitutional in many respects, clearly violating our rights, especially our property rights. For instance, your recent changes to Title 12, Chapter 1 regarding water lines, who owns what, who is responsible for what, are inherently contradictory, and you give warrantless entry to our private property. Then there are the charter amendments that are on the ballot, which restrict even further our rights to recall and referendum and the right to elect our municipal judge. On the agenda tonight is your attempt to commit the city and therefore the citizens to Prop 123 requirements, giving over even more control to the state, developers, and staff. Have you not learned anything from the failures of the so-called low-income housing like Acoma Lofts and Traditions, and all the credits given to Alta Cherry Hills Development and Oxford Station, under the guise that they would give a boost to businesses and we would get more property taxes? We have yet to even recover the credits given, and the developer more than doubled his investment on Alta Cherry Hills, not to mention the failures of the businesses which the Acoma Lofts project was supposed to support. And it was built with low-income state funds and city-owned land sold at a quarter of its value in installment payments. Yet the Acoma Lofts are, from the beginning, at market rate, even though required to rent to Section 8 and low income. Ditto Traditions. No Section 8 people were ever in Acoma Lofts. Then there's the biogas project, which one of you is still trying to run on as an achievement. We still have not recovered the initial investment, which was ripped out of the sewer enterprise fund, and our utility bills were increased to restore that fund. A good part of the investment build was for direct pipeline to Excel, who as yet will not buy and has not bought the product. Sales of produced gas barely covers the operating expenses and is vastly underestimated and unaccounted. The only so-called income is the renewable energy credits, which are due to be eliminated. We are an example or a model for what not to do. Yet on the agenda is another increase to our bills relating to the problems caused by impetuous and unproductive programs, which should have been put before the citizens as a ballot measure. And you are still trying to curtail our free speech rights by this weird video about council meetings saying we can't applaud or cheer. How much did that cost the citizens? Were you trying to cover for your screw up and holding a special meeting as a study session, changing the start time at will? You keep proving what you should have been, that you should have been recalled and not reelected.
Thank you, Ms. Dickerson, for your time tonight. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, thank you for your time. Up next is Jan Weipert, an Englewood resident here to address council.
Good evening, Jan Weipert, Bellevue and Federal. First, I want to say, Jim Woodward, I don't know if I'll get a chance to talk to you while you're still on council. I guess I probably will. But I want to say thank you for voting against Code Next. You, and I don't agree on much, but I appreciated that you stood up for the citizens and said, wait a minute, they aren't giving on anything. And I appreciate that you stood up for us. Steve Ward, thank you for voting. I don't know that you would have if there had only been 3, but thank you. And Rita Russell, thank you, because you're the one person on this council that seems to really care about the citizens and the money that gets spent. I heard there's another $600,000 that went down the drain today. So I also want to go back and say, I like that we would have an invocation. God, protect the city from harm. Bring us closer to your light. Amen. There are 3 things I want to talk about now that I've wasted a minute. I'll talk fast. One is the city clerk's office. The recall election failed, which is the way some things go, but I think there are some things that happened really positively through that. A lot of people stood up and got interested, and if we can maintain even 20% of those people being aware of what's going on, maybe we can stop some of the frivolous crap and self-interest that goes on up there. We are a home rule city. Ecuador had elections Sunday. They hand counted over 10 million paper ballots with results the same day. We could have done paper ballots. City council members live for self-protection. We're a home rule city. The city clerk's office has gone from 1 or 2 people to 4, I understand, in the last year. But they couldn't handle a recall when they had 2 extra people. They need to work in office instead of at home. Maybe then they wouldn't need 4. They'd get some of these things done. They ignored requirements of getting bids, of looking at alternatives with this statement. They were too busy. It was the timing. We had to do it. I know I got an answer last week. We're a home rule city. Pay attention to the rules. There's supposed to be a candidate profile booklet. The city paid for it. To my knowledge, I did not receive this book. Why? Who was responsible for distributing the book? Why did some people not get it? We're a home rule city. Let's take care of our citizens. The clerk's office is not doing their job. There are other issues. Remember back when this all started, she had the rolls wrong for 2 of the districts for 2 elections prior to this one. And she gets a raise or a recommendation for a higher position. What's going on, guys? Pay attention to what's going on in this city. And they worked hard. I'm giving them that. They worked hard, but Okay, I mentioned, this is second topic. I mentioned 2 weeks ago that the illegal immigration surge coming to Colorado, the Venezuelans are here. Apparently this fell on deaf ears because I didn't hear it on the study session tonight. Now there are busloads of Haitians coming to Denver. A friend of mine's greeting them. They also will be trying to figure out how to eat, shelter, maybe work when the government funds stop supporting them. The federal government is spending trillions on creating crises in the Mideast. They're not protecting our borders. This influx is not going to stop. And Polis declared our state a sanctuary state. We are home rule. Again, I ask that the city protect us. Englewood Council can declare the city to not be a sanctuary city. Send a letter requesting the governor to reverse his position. Send a letter to Council of Cities requesting they send letters to the governor. New York, Chicago, and others are being overrun and crying foul. After they said, yeah, we'll be sanctuary cities. Please protect our city, our citizens, our homeless. They're the ones that are going to suffer. Your batting average for 4 of you voting for Code Next is extremely poor in protecting us. Crime rates in 2020, Englewood was at 91.7% at the top of the crime rates. There are steps to stop this. You guys, one of the things is environmental protection. You did not vote to have parking spaces off the street. That's one of the protections for vehicle theft.
Ms. Weipert, your
Thank you.
5 minutes are up. Thank you very much for your time tonight. Any questions for members of council? See none. Thank you for your time, Ms. Weipert. Up next is Sheila Singer, here to address council. Oh, Sheila, thank you. And Ms. Kim Wright, an Englewood resident, here to address council. Good evening, Ms. Wright. If you could just state your name and your address or cross streets.
Good evening, Kim Wright, Tufts and Julian. I forgot where I lived. I have a lot of whys and hows. First of all, I'm asking why on our homepage, Cocktails with Council is the first thing you pull up. But why is there no information on our election? It takes 5 or 6 clicks if you know how to navigate our website to get to election information. Jan just mentioned that she didn't get the book. This book. Our entire neighborhood, west of Federal, has not received election information. I received this because I had to ask somebody for it. Another area, close to University in District 2, hasn't received it either. Those are border areas. 2 different people running for city council are in those areas, and nobody in those areas have received the election book. That's a big issue for me. I've addressed council over and over again about my area specifically, west of Federal, not getting information. It was the Englewood magazine initially, and I had to get put on a special mailing list, thanks to Mr. Ward, to receive it. And that's why I receive it. When I speak to my neighbors, maybe 1 out of 8 receive it. Now, with the lead pipe flight mailer, it was addressed to us specifically, and we received it. But election information, thousands of people didn't receive this information. That's a big issue. And then Cocktails with Council is on the homepage, and only if you know how to navigate our website, you could get to the information. Homepage, government, city clerk, scroll down, election information, general election 2023, and then scroll down and you see it. That's a problem, and everybody up here should have a problem with that. Ballots drop today. Several people will get them tomorrow, and they won't have any information on those of us running unless we've knocked on the doors, spoken to them. So everyone up for re-election, or anybody that is running for the first time, should have a problem with that. And why is Cocktails with Council on the homepage and not our election information? That's an issue. And I've addressed this over and over again. I was assured last year that the city would do better. That's not better. It was mentioned also how city council meetings work. Came out on YouTube. I get automatic things. And yes, it says no clapping or cheering during it, that it could be disruptive. I have never heard a disruption. Clapping is always done before the next person comes up. And also, Mayor Sierra mentioned that gifts aren't welcome anymore. Member Anderson said to Sheila Singer, "Thank you. We like the props." That's a conflict. A gift of a candy bar or a cup or something like that, I believe the laws are under a dollar amount. So we need to make sure people understand what's being said. We need to get this right. information needs to be given to everybody everywhere, and it needs to be the same. The cocktails thing, it really bothers me because some people will be talked to, some information to others. I think it's I don't want to say election interference, but it borderlines, not given true information to everybody. And the scales are unbalanced. So I hope this book is sent to everybody immediately. And if that means addressing everybody opposed to this, then that needs to be done. It needs to be done yesterday. And I hope it's top priority. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wright, for your time tonight. Any questions from members of council? Seeing none, Ms. Wright, thank you for your time. And that concludes scheduled public comment. We're moving on to unscheduled public comment. It looks like we didn't have anyone sign up in person, but we have 2 online. Is that correct?
We have 2 online.
Okay, and I believe the first speaker is Donald Nochis. Is that how you pronounce it? Donald, can you hear me?
Donald, can you hear us?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Good evening, Mr. Nochis. This is, just want to let you know you're limited to 3 minutes. And if you could just state your name and your address or cross streets, and then you can begin.
Yeah, I don't have a public comment, Mayor. I'm just here for a later part of the agenda for Sel.
Perfect. Well, I appreciate that, Mr. Nochis. Thank you for that. So we'll move on to the next speaker, Cheryl Diedrich.
I'm the same. I'm here for Excel on the second consent agenda.
Okay, perfect. All right, so I guess that does conclude scheduled public comments. So thank you to Donald and Cheryl for clarifying that. I guess, Member Kolnick, if you're ready to give a response.
Okay. Ms. Dickerson, thank you for speaking tonight. In response to the entrances for meter infrastructure, being part of lead service line replacement and advanced metering infrastructure, which is going to greatly improve city water operations and customer uses. Also, you're concerned about the biogas project. Not only is the gas project running at a surplus, but the payback period will actually be sooner than was originally projected. We're seeing projects like this happen all across the country, and as evidenced by the awards that the city has received tonight, we are a leader in this, and we are at the front of the pack for what municipalities are considering across the country. And I would actually commend our utilities team for the hard work they've done and are continuing to do in making the city of Englewood a leader in the country. Ms. Weipert, I'll echo your thanks for Rita and Jim and Steve's service to the city. It takes a lot of time and effort to be up here as a council member, as I've learned in my short 2 months, and they've been doing it for a lot longer than I have, so thank you guys. Thank you also for the invocation, and I also agree with you. The engagement that we saw in the recall and just the democratic process overall is encouraging, and I hope that we see just as much, if not more, engagement in the general election coming up. So anybody that's listening or gets to view this afterwards, I'd encourage you all to be a part of the next election. Ms. Wright, thank you for bringing to light the difficulty with finding general election information. I was looking on the website myself right now, and even myself have had a difficult time locating that. So I think that's something that we should look at and take that feedback seriously. So thank you all for speaking tonight, and appreciate your time.
Thank you. Anyone? I'll go Member Woodward and then Member Noonan-Camp.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Wright, I would like to address the election books. I know from going years back with the Malley Center, Malley Trust Fund specifically, and sending out mailings throughout the city, and nobody seemed to be getting them, or not everybody seemed to be getting them. And it was found that they were found in a trash dumpster that had been dumped evidently by some postal people. Currently, I haven't received an election book either. I don't receive the regular book that we have, our quarterly book that goes out. I asked the postman for it. He kind of looks dumbfounded and says, yeah, we had some of those, and I'll see if there's any left and I'll get you one. And then he delivers me one. My neighbors don't get one. So it's not the city that's doing this. This is the post office that's doing it. And so you can go right over to the post office on Lehigh and talk to them, because that's where the problem is.
Thank you.
No, it
Thank you,
is.
Member Wood. Member Noonekamp?
Sure. I'm just going to respond to a couple comments. Happy to do some education tonight, actually, for both Ms. Wright and Member Kolnick. If you go to the City Council or the city's website at this exact moment and you scroll just a few inches below the first thing you will see under Spotlight, Meet Your City Council Candidates. It's right there on the homepage, one click required, everything available to any voter who would like to find anything whatsoever. Additionally, I confirmed with the city manager, we did send out the election guides last week. I also have not received mine, for what it's worth. But we can't control exactly when the post office does deliver those. But as part of the civic duty and every obligation of a voter, if anyone wants to find that information, I'm happy to share that. Folks can find them here in the city center where we have printed copies, or there is actually a PDF copy also at that Meet Your City Council Candidate on the homepage of the city website. To my knowledge, there's no law that says we have to send that information out. We do that as a way of service to the members of the community so that they can make good informed decisions. Otherwise, candidates can do their own campaigning.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Member Russell?
Thank you. I would like to remind Councilmember Noonekamp that 30% of the people in this city do not have a computer. And the city does have control over that. It is not the post office's fault. It's the city and how we have it delivered. Maybe we should get it to the post office earlier. And the bottom line is, if we pay for first-class mail, everybody would get it. It's because of the way it is. So I think it is something that the city needs to look at. And the fact that there are a lot of people here that have not gotten it, that is very troubling. I have not gotten it either. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Mayor Pro Tem, members of the public, please go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know if it matters, but just for the record, the election guide has arrived at the Ward household on South Delaware Street. There was one piece of incorrect election information that was given tonight. It was alleged that we placed a charter amendment on the ballot regarding the election of the judge. There is no such charter amendment on our ballot. Council discussed the possibility of putting a charter amendment stating as such on the ballot, and we decided against it. So when you look at those charter amendments and you're trying to figure out why there's not one about the judge, it's because we didn't refer one about the judge.
Thank you very much, Mayor Pro Tem. And members of the public, please refrain. So any other comments or any? Seeing none, we're now moving on to consent agenda items. So we're moving on to agenda item 9. It looks like the only item pulled tonight is 9C1. Any others? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9A1, 9B1, and 9C2 and 3?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonekamp. Could I get a second? Second. Thank you, Member Anderson. Can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonekamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you. Moving on, or moving back to 9C1, we have Director of Community Development Brad Power, and Member Russell, I believe you have a question regarding the resolution for Prop 123.
I actually do have a problem with Proposition 123. My question is, how did the city file an application for Proposition 123 grant monies without the approval of City Council? According to the council communication, there has been no previous action by the City Council I believe there needs to be a study session on this topic, and there needs to be a formal discussion and a formal decision by city council. It should not have been put on consent agenda, let alone the agenda. And so, my question is, as long as Director Power is up here, when did city council discuss this? Did we even get a presentation about this?
Good evening, Councilmember Russell, Mayor Sierra, members of council. Community Development did submit Englewood's Prop 123 commitment in August to the state. And we did that following a series of questions that were coming up at various council meetings relative to council members asking when we were going to submit our commitment information. So we did do that in mid-August. And based on the information submitted, Englewood's commitment for the 3-year cycle for Proposition 123 funding would be a commitment of 170 affordable housing units. We did provide status updates to the council relative to our submission of the information in August. And then also we provided that in September when the state accepted our submission. We did that in your Friday updates for that information when we had it, both when we submitted the information and when we heard back from the state. As I mentioned, the state accepted the city's filing in September, mid-September, and Englewood is approximately one of 100 or so jurisdictions around the state that have submitted the filing to be eligible for Proposition 123 funding. Not every city completed a formal city council resolution prior to their filing. In consultation with the city attorney, we've determined that it would be appropriate for the city council to follow up our initial filing with the formal resolution, and that's why it's before you this evening. There is guidance on the state's website that a city council member or a city manager or other jurisdiction official doesn't necessarily need to sign the filing information. So we followed that direction in August based on what the DOLA website and what the DOLA rules were propagating at that point in time. The acceptance of the city's filing by the state only qualifies Englewood to participate in the Proposition 123 program. Specific program funding requests and other items relative to the cities participating from this point forward in specific programs, that would be subject to a separate and individual filing of applications for each program that the city may pursue in the future. I will also say that staff will return to the council for authorization to apply for any specific Proposition 123 programs going forward in the future as we may pursue them. You would provide that authorization prior to us going to that formal measure. And I would like to apologize for the discrepancy over when the eligibility filing was made and when the timing of the council resolution before you this evening. But we still think that we have been deemed eligible. This resolution that's in front of you this evening would make it very compliant with the statute as well, in addition to the rulemaking that DOLA propagated on their website.
Thank you, Director. Member Russell, go ahead.
Thank you. So, City Attorney, is this our policy? Do normally we bring things before council and discuss it before we apply for something that will obligate the city to certain requirements?
I'll respond with the traditional legal response. It depends. It depends on exactly what it is. In this particular case, as Director Powers stated, he was relying on the DOLA guidance on what's required to make us eligible for the funds. But then I went directly to the statute, and the statute had slightly different wording than what DOLA was pushing out. So I recommended that we bring this to City Council for formal approval tonight. There is a November 1 deadline for that submission, which of course the city has submitted. If we are binding the city to expenditure of funds, generally that would fall under the city procurement policy, but this isn't a binding contract by the city, so it didn't fall under the procurement policy. We have included that's somewhat relevant, some provisions in the council policies regarding when city council wants to be consulted before the city applies for things or binds the city to accept money. And we discussed that in an August study session. So it's somewhat relevant, but it's not a policy that's currently in place either.
Thank you. I actually feel, and I guess maybe I shouldn't weigh in now, I would like to make a motion that we table this till the next meeting and have a discussion on it. I think that would be the right thing to do because there are issues here that were complicated by the but I would move to table it, see if there's a second. If not, I'll weigh in later.
Thank you, Member Russell. Can I get a second to the motion to table this item to a study session?
Mayor, I have a point of information from Member Russell. I think it would help me with my decision on a second if I had a better understanding of some specific concerns. Just wanting a larger discussion is one thing, and I can kind of understand that. But if there's something here that's hanging in the lurch for you that would make a difference in your decision if we had a full meeting, that would be helpful for me.
I don't believe that we have been apprised of all the unintended consequences of this, like, say, the 171 affordable housing units that have to be built in the next 3 years by accepting this. And we are a small city, and 171 units will take up a lot. And I think it's, where are we going to get it from? I think that council got an email from a citizen that talked a lot about things that could happen from this. And I do think it's something that we ought to consider.
Director, do you have anything to add? I see the light's still on.
I would just like to reiterate one of the things that I said before is we are obligated to deliver 170 units of affordable housing if the city goes forward with specifically applying for projects under the Prop 123 funding. What is before you this evening and what we did in August is just to be eligible under Prop 123. It does not bind the city to any expenditure of money. It's not tied to any grant funds at this point. It's to make the city eligible for Prop 123 funding in the future. And as I said in my previous comments, anything that we bring forward from this point forward relative to specific applications, we will bring for you for your consideration.
Thank you for that clarification, Director Power. Mayor Pro Tem, anything you want to add? All right, with that, I'll ask again, is there a second to the motion to table this item to a study session? I don't see a second. Member Russell, so that we don't have a second, but is any other questions regarding item 9C1? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 9C1?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any comments?
Mayor?
Go ahead,
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Member Russell.
I will not be supporting this. And another thing that is very upsetting to me is that we would put this on consent agenda. So just to hide this from the public and not talk about it at all. That is very troubling to me with the leadership on this council, that we would move something forward that would try to hide things from the citizens. So I think in the future, there are things that need to be put on the regular agenda, or all of council needs to be asked about it. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I guess for me, it's what you just said, Director Power. This doesn't obligate us to do anything, but if we didn't do this tonight, we would be passing up a potential opportunity. We don't know what that opportunity is shaped like. We don't know what it looks like, but it could very well be the difference between a developer coming into our city, building 175 or 200 units where it's used by Wright at market rate, or building those same units at a slightly more affordable rate because he has access to grant money that he wouldn't otherwise have access to based on an agreement on Prop 123. Is that a correct, appropriate summation of what we would potentially be looking at?
I thought we already had question time. We're just making statements.
Well, I think there's just an additional clarification. We've done this in the past where we asked additional questions after we made a motion. So, Director Power, if you want to just answer the question.
Well, it's hard to stand here tonight and predict if one project would consume that number or if there'd be several projects over the course of the 3 years. That's something that is obviously not knowable this evening, but it would give the city the opportunity to work with the development community to expand affordable housing opportunities, particularly in our multifamily projects that may be coming down the road. If we have access to those funds through the state, that we certainly open those conversations.
Well, I would say, just based upon the fact that it doesn't obligate us to do anything, the action we're taking tonight doesn't obligate us to do anything, but it does open potential opportunity that we wouldn't otherwise have. I'm interested in voting for this tonight. And I would like to respond to the issue about this being on the consent agenda as well, if
Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Unless you want to address that, Mayor. I think Member Russell has hit on something. You know, the consent agenda is designed for non-controversial issues, and we probably should have anticipated her objection to this, which we didn't. But it's not, we don't put things on the consent agenda to hide them from the general public. We put them on the consent agenda because we expect them to pass and they don't require a lot of discussion. We don't always get that right because it requires us to guess about the needs of 5 other people. So to the extent that this should not have gone on the consent agenda, I'm glad you pulled it, Member Russell. And that's how we correct those problems in the future.
Mayor, I'm sorry, but if I could, I just want to make one thing very crystal clear. The one obligation that the city is committed to is if we take advantage of Prop 123 funding, the obligation is 170 units over the next 3 years. That, I just wanted to make sure, is that's what the state accepted in September.
Thank you very much, Director Power. Member Woodward.
Thank you. The affordable housing that's going up, the apartments building south of Chews, how many units is that?
I believe it's around 80.
Okay, is that included or a part of the 170?
It is not, because they secured their building permits before the state propagated the Prop 123 rules.
Okay. Okay, that's what I wanted to know. Thank you.
All right, everyone, we do have a motion and a second, and with that, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes and 1 nay, with the 1 nay being Member Russell.
Thank you, City Clerk, and thank you very much, Director Power, for the information. There is no public hearing items for tonight, so we're moving on to 11B1. This is CB 67 proposed rate increase for the Stormwater Utility Fund. We have the Deputy Director, Tim Host, here tonight, but with this being a second reading, any questions from members of council regarding 11B1? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11B1?
I move to approve 11B1.
Go ahead. Thank you, Member Noonenkamp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. Any further comments regarding this? Go ahead, Member Russell.
So I should have asked a question before. Is this a different inflationary increase than we talked about a week ago or 2 weeks ago?
This is the same one.
This is the same one. Okay, so it came forward on an ordinance, not on a motion.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So that's why it didn't get put on a consent agenda.
Right.
Okay.
And
Thank you.
we actually, it was also 6-1, or it wasn't majority, I guess I should say.
Right.
Or excuse me, it wasn't.
Right.
Yeah, unanimous, there we go.
All right. Thank you. I
Thank
will be
you.
voting no again. Thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. And with that, no further comments, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Nay.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 6 ayes and 1 nay, the 1 nay being Council Member Russell.
Thank you very much, City Clerk. Moving on to 11C1. This is the Grantland Concrete and Landscaping Sidewalk and Ramp Gap Construction Project. We have Deputy Director Tim Host again to provide us a presentation.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for the introduction. I'll go over a brief presentation on this item, and then I'll answer any questions you have. See if the presentation will come up here. Is it available? Or?
Next one.
There we are.
There we go.
All right, so I've got our project engineer Nadia Naji's online as well to answer any questions on this when I'm done with the presentation here, but I'll go through the summary of this item and what we're building and the bids we got for it. So the first slide here, the purpose of the project, this project is to install sidewalks where none exist right now. There's people walking there. There's certainly a dirt trail in both of these locations, but there's no sidewalk there yet. And so we're trying to fill in some of these gaps around the city where people are using the roadway shoulder as a sidewalk, and we want to make sure it's safe for them to walk on and it's ADA accessible. So there's two locations. We've got location along Union Avenue west of Santa Fe over to the South Platte River. There's a trail there we're connecting to and improving the sidewalk, as well as just north of the Civic Center here along Inca there on the west side, south of Dartmouth. We've got the Little Dry Creek Trail that connects into the RTD light rail station there, so that'll be a connection there. And this project uses our sidewalk and ramp gap budgeted funding that we have in the Public Improvement Fund, and continues our efforts to provide multimodal transportation or accessibility on all of our right-of-way corridors. So here's the two locations here. You'll see on the left is Union Avenue there. There's actually 3 or 4 little gaps there we're filling in, but filling in those gaps makes a continuous sidewalk from Santa Fe all the way to the Platte River Trail there along the South Platte River going north and south. And on the right-hand side is the sidewalk along Inca Street that connects from the existing RTD parking lot north to that Little Dry Creek Trail there is what it's called. So that'll make that connection and allow people to move between the trail and to the light rail station. That's the one that's pretty worn down. There's a pretty good dirt path there. A lot of people are using that already, so we're going to make that accessible for everybody. So that's the point of that. And as a reminder, the city has about I wrote down there's 9.5 miles totals of missing sidewalks in the whole city. We did a summary about 2 years ago on that, so this is chipping away at it. Certainly not a huge portion, but 1,200 feet certainly gets us a little closer to filling in all these gaps around the city. So we'll go to the bids here, I think. Go here, there we go. Oop, back one more here. So we got 5 bids on this project there. We actually got a really competitive bid. The low bid was very competitive on this project. The engineer estimate was about $350,000, and we ended up getting the low bid at $172,000. We have talked to the low bidder and made sure they were comfortable with their bid and understood the other bids, and that they were committing to a very competitive price that was certainly considerably lower than anybody else, and they were comfortable, and they stood behind their bid, and they have signed the contract saying they will do it for this price, and they are confident they can get the work done. And we've checked the references on them. They actually did some work at Romans Park for the Parks Department there and did some good work. So we're satisfied. We think they can handle this project there. It's very similar to the park sidewalk work. So we're confident they can handle the work. And we've here tonight to recommend that the contract be awarded to them. The funding here is the Public Improvement Fund. Like I mentioned, we have a sidewalk gap project in there. There's I think, what is it about? Budget amount left in there, it's about $369,000 we have left in that project budget, and with this low bid, we've got about $200,000 left. We can do other missing sidewalks, which is good news. We can maybe tackle another priority sidewalk around the city with the additional funding we'll have as a result of the low bid we got here. So the schedule there is notice to proceed, assuming council approves this item tonight. We're hoping to get started 1st of November here, and then weather permitting, we should be done by the middle of December. It's definitely pushing Mother Nature here a little bit to try to do this in the fall, but we're going to see what happens, and if the weather doesn't cooperate, we'll have to push it into when the weather does cooperate, and the contractor understands that and is ready to adapt to the weather as needed to make sure we put the concrete down when the weather allows. So in summary, we recommend that council award a construction contract to Greatland Concrete and Landscaping for the construction of this sidewalk and ramp gap project. And with that, I'll answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Mayor Protem.
This is maybe the first time I've been on this dais when I've seen a project bid come in so far below the engineer's estimate and so far below any other competitive bidders. And I have to admit that raises my suspicions a little bit. Am I going to see a change order for this in 3 months, Director House, or how do we assure that that doesn't happen?
So our specifications are pretty clear. There's not a lot of room for change orders and things. And we did vet this contractor pretty well and asked him, are you sure this is what you can do? Because you're exactly right. I mean, that's considerably lower than any other bid. But we showed the other bids to him, the other unit prices, and he's confident he can build it for this price. So yeah, we didn't really find any reason not to let him go and do it. And he signed the contract, and he's comfortable that he can get it done for that price. So we certainly did have that same concern and did do a lot of investigation and questioning and said, are you sure you can do it for this? And you understand the other bids? And he came back very confident. He's comfortable he can do it for the bid price he submitted, so.
All right, thank you.
Member Russell.
So, my one question is down here, and it's on the west side of Inca where we're putting sidewalk in along. Is there sidewalk along the parking lot?
There is sidewalk on the east side over there as well. Yes, there is, along Inca there. You're talking along.
Right,
along the
but
park.
also on the
Oh,
west
parking
side,
lot.
is there a sidewalk along the west side by the parking lot?
There is not, actually. The parking lot is kind of the de facto sidewalk in that area. There is no sidewalk along the parking lot. People that move over into the parking lot area to get to the light rail station. So it's kind of a combination parking lot, sidewalk access to the light rail station there.
Well, I mean, will that be, at some point, is that included in the 9 miles of sidewalk gap that we have in the city of Englewood?
That is part of it. It is a missing sidewalk gap for sure, but for this particular section, we felt like that there is a pedestrian path to get to the light rail station, so it wasn't necessarily a priority at this point. And certainly, there's a lot of gaps around the city that don't necessarily go anywhere or need to be done right now. There's an alternate path or whatever, so that was the consideration here, is the parking lot is somewhat of a combined pedestrian access.
So what the engineer's estimate, was that committed to the budget for this year?
That was based on the 369. We came in just under that. We kind of budgeted for, well, what we thought would be around 350, 375 was our total, and that was our estimate. So it is certainly, this bid is certainly less than that. We were quite surprised as well. And like I said, we've talked to the contractor quite a bit, but it is, and our estimates obviously based on previous bids for concrete work that we've seen. But this little different project, it is fairly straightforward, and it's basically just filling in concrete where there's dirt now. So I'm not a contractor, I can't speak to it, but certainly we did question this contractor quite a lot about what he understands what he's getting into here.
Okay, I appreciate that. And just, so the work that they did over in, you said Romans Park, did they pour sidewalks over there?
It was part of the sidewalks through the park there, yeah. Yeah, for the remodel of the park, they did some of that detached sidewalk through there.
Okay, and actually they did a pretty good job over there.
And we talked to the Parks Department staff about it, and they were very happy with the work, and the contractor was very easy to work with and cooperative, and there was no, that was another question we had about change orders and stuff. Did they have a lot at the park project? And he was very, the contractor did the work for the price he said, and there wasn't a lot of back and forth change order type to talk like that. So we're confident that it seems like a good contractor to work with, and we have firsthand knowledge of it from other city departments, so we had confidence that they can do that on this project as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Member Kolnick.
It looks like the width of these sidewalks are all gonna be 5 feet, is that correct?
That's correct.
Where does that standard come from? Is that something that we recently updated, or?
So that's typical for collector and arterial streets. We have 5-foot walk in our I think it's in our code now, our land development code as well as our engineering standards. It's 5 foot on collectors and arterials, and then 4 foot on residential right now is what we have for our standard width. Kind of the minimum ADA width anyway.
And so the 5 feet allows for both that's both a wheelchair and a person next to them. That's kind of the width consideration on arterial.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a wheelchair, but I'm not sure about somebody next to them, but definitely a wheelchair width is what the 4 foot is for sure. But the 5 is a little more just for the busier roads. We try to be a little bit wider, but it's Yeah, about
Okay.
a foot is all.
How does that 5 feet compare to Denver's standard? Do we know that off the top of our head?
I don't know Denver standard off the top of my head. It might be 6 feet. I know some cities go 6 feet on the collector arterial type roads, but we're still at 5 right now.
Okay.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. I think you and Member Russell both asked my question. So I guess the expectation, since there is still missing sidewalk south of where we're adding on Inca, the expectation is for the pedestrians or cyclists or whoever happens to be on there to jump into the RTD parking lot or jump onto the road once it ends.
Correct, yeah, that
Okay.
is there's that parallel path there, and like I say, it definitely is not ideal. We'd love to have the sidewalk all the way through, but it's additional costs, and it's, what's out there now would take a lot of work to put a sidewalk there. All that landscaping and mounding they've done, it'd be a lot of moving of earth and stuff. It'd be very
Right.
costly to get that piece done. So we felt like this was kind of an easy win here, a quick, low-hanging fruit one that we could fill in very quickly, and obviously the cost is very cheap on this. So we're trying to find those that we can do fairly straightforward and save some money on not doing a lot of earthwork.
We have the wider sidewalk on the east side of the road though, right?
Correct. Yeah, the east side does have a wide, and I think that's probably at least 6 feet, yeah.
Okay, because that's currently what people are doing, at least in terms of getting down. So
Correct, yeah,
just
the
kind of
crosswalk.
curious, yeah. Okay. Perfect. And with that, any further questions? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C1?
I'll move 11C1.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Anderson. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson,
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp,
Aye.
Member Kolnick,
Aye.
Member Russell,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward,
Aye.
Member Woodward,
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you so much, Deputy Director. Up next is 11C2. This is the CMGC agreement with PCL Construction for the Allen Water Treatment Plant Space Improvements Projects. We have Director Van Rye. Good evening, Director.
Good evening again, Council. This is another item we have tonight. We have a number of utilities items tonight in South Platte Renew. So this is actually the construction phase of the work that we've been progressing on improvements to the Allen Water Treatment Plant as it relates to space and control room and some of the offices. As you recall, a month or so ago, I brought the changes to the design contract that we move forward with. This is actually the construction aspect, so we'll be talking about the actual construction of the project tonight. So to remind everyone, this is what we settled on through the CMGC process as a final scope. We think this actually gets us the best improvement to the Allen treatment plant in this phase from a space perspective. We have 7 total new offices, 14 dedicated workstations for our operators of the plant, a 20-person conference room, which we don't have there right now, a modernized control room. This is something that's really important for us too. And within that modernized control room is actually a dedicated server room. So as we make improvements to the SCADA systems and the electronics and computer automation of the plant over the next few years, having a dedicated server room is really important. A new break room. Actually, the new break room was the old break room that we're going to turn back into a break room. So we get a little bit of a benefit because some of the plumbing's already there because that's what it used to be. Additionally, we have some improvements to the process that are on our laundry list of things that we need to invest in on the Allen treatment plant. And this is the air scour and air blower. So this is part of the backwashing of the filters. So we blow air through them to blow the particulate that gets caught in the filters so that we can continually reuse the filters so they don't get clogged. Those blowers are pretty old. The electrical around those blowers are pretty old. So we're able to couple this project with some improvements to that blower system. And so we do make some electrical process improvements and definitely a component of the treatment plant that pairs well with this project since we're because of the location that we're working. In last year in May, we solicited for a CMGC contractor. We had 5 contractors submit proposals. We selected PCL. PCL had the lowest cost during design development fee, as well as a competitive markup, which is the two things you evaluate these proposals on. So we selected PCL. We started the pre-construction in fall of last year in November, looked at constructability, how to build the project, refined the scope to make sure that what we were building was the right scope for this phase of our space improvements throughout the utility. We brought it to the Water and Sewer Board last week, and they recommended approval of council. Essentially what we end up with is a CMGC, which gives us a guaranteed maximum price for the work. And so once we enter into this contract, the scope as defined and as designed will not cost more than this number unless there's some change in condition that is documented that's different than what was originally anticipated in design. So how that breaks down is you have the actual cost of the work, like the actual elements of the work. For the space improvements and the blower process, you can see those are 1.7 and 550,000. And then you have some electrical. We have some electrical improvements that need to be done as part of this. The two that are there but aren't necessarily spent right out of the gate are contingency and allowances. So the contingency is a 50-50 contingency between what's called owner-controlled contingency and contractor-controlled contingency. So that's in there to account for situations that occur as the project gets constructed, to ensure that we have approval for those potential risks. It's tied to what's called a risk register. So we look at all the risks that might occur throughout the course of the project, and we dedicate a certain contingency that's half of it's controlled by us and half of it's controlled by the contractor. The allowances is something that's fully controlled by us. So if the project goes off without a hitch, we don't have any issues whatsoever throughout the entire execution of the project. Those two numbers, in theory, would not get spent. But they're there because based on the risk register and the construction of projects, we anticipate that there's a possibility that those get could be spent. So the total project cost is $3.348 million. That breaks down as $2.5 million, around $2.5 million. It's not exactly $2.5 million. $2.5 million is for the space improvements, and right at about $850,000 is for that process improvement, the blowers and the associated electrical. How we budgeted this, the process improvements is within the budget, line item budget that we have annually for investment in the treatment plant, and so that this falls into that budget line item. On the space side of it, we had budgeted $2 million. It came in, our refined project came in at $2.5 million. So what that means is we'll make up that additional $500,000 by not fully expending some other project that was anticipated in 2023 and 2024. And based on the ramp up of the execution of our capital plan, that's something that we are able to absorb in our execution of the project. So I'll open it up for any questions.
Thank you, Director. Any questions for Director Van Ryn? All right, seeing no questions, can I get a motion to approve 11C2?
I move to approve 11C2.
Thank you, Member Noonan-Camp. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. Any further comments? Member Noonan-Camp.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just say, I'm glad to see this coming forward. One of the first things I did when I came on council was take a tour of the water treatment plant. And I think it's bringing a lot of our infrastructure within the plant just to a baseline standard of where it needs to be to produce, not only to house the team that we have and for them to do their work well for the citizens, but also to do the actual work that needs to be done in that building and to bring it into the 21st century. So happy to see this expenditure go through.
Member Kolnick?
Yeah, I'll just say I agree with Member Noonan-Camp. I would just encourage the city and the utilities department to continue to look at a lot of the opportunities that IRA funding presents for municipalities, especially the way this is connected with South Platte Renew. There are opportunities within the IRA for direct tax credits to municipalities. And so depending on other capital improvements that may be proposed, there may be an opportunity for the city to take advantage of federal money for these types of things. So I guess that's maybe directed to city utilities, probably city manager too in some capacity, but if there's a way to explore that further, maybe not necessarily for this project, but for others, there's definitely opportunity in that piece of legislation.
There might be an opportunity here. I'll turn this over to Deputy Director Stone. She's tracking our securing of those infrastructure funds, and so I'll just let her speak a little bit to that.
Sure, and I'll speak to this project specifically. So included in that WIFI amendment that you saw last month, this project was added. So we are using federal funds under our WIFI loan program for this project. And then for the infrastructure money, we are going after funds for our lead service line replacement project. And then we're also working with the state through the state revolving fund to access any additional funds that they have available. So.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Anything else to add, Director?
I'll just add that every opportunity for additional funds for low interest loans and grant money, Sarah is working with some of our rate and fee consultants who are experts at going after this kind of money to ensure that we're not only going after it, but that we're seen as ahead of the curve and at the head of the line for securing this funding. But we'll keep an eye out and keep looking for opportunities to even further help to utilize those infrastructure bills to help us further access funds that we can.
All right. Thank you, everyone. We have a motion and a second. So with that, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonenkamp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you, Director Van Rye. You're not going anywhere. We have the MSA renewal with Paymentus Corp. for gateway processing services in the estimated amount of $180,000.
I'm going to turn this one fully over to Deputy Director Stone to present.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Oh, yes, thank you. Okay, so this item tonight is to renew our master services agreement with Paymentus. Paymentus provides us payment gateway services, so that is the way that we can take online payments for utility bills, as well as the automated phone system. That's all through Paymentus. So this agreement has been in place since 2011 with this particular vendor. It has been auto-renewed since then because the terms of the agreement have not changed, and that includes the fees for transactions. Before this agreement auto-renewed again, Paymentus approached us to renegotiate some of these rates. We agreed to do that because they are also helping us implement our new billing system, and it had also been rates that that had been negotiated back in 2011. So it was probably time to take a look at those rates. So what that did was that increased the transaction fees based on payment type. So we have, in the agreement, we'd have an ACH fee of 30 cents per transaction. And for credit cards and debit cards, it depends a little bit on the type. It's set by the credit card merchant, but it's about 7.5 cents per transaction. In addition to that, we also pay interchange and assessment fees. That's basically the swipe fee. So some companies now pass that on to the consumer. We do not pass it on currently to customers. It's built into our rates and fees and categorized as an operating expense when we set our rates and fees. The reason that we're looking for optimal source for this agreement is that we are in the middle of a billing system conversion. Paymentus is an integral part of that, and it wouldn't necessarily make sense to make a change right now. So it'd be minimal interruptions if we continue with Paymentus. They will provide additional payment options once the new billing system is live. So that will include things like Apple Pay and Venmo. And it's the most cost-effective approach currently, given where we are with the implementation of the new billing system. We do plan to issue an RFP next year for these services, just to make sure we're getting the best value for these services, because we were negotiating these rates without necessarily knowing what the market is. We presented this last week to the Water and Sewer Board, and they approved it at the October 10th meeting. With that, I'll turn it over to any questions.
Thank you very much, Deputy Director. Any questions? Mayor Pro Tem.
So we're approving this now. What are the implications of changing a payment processor in general? Is it a mistake to approve this now because in a year we're going to look at changing again? Or what are the consequences of doing this transition now?
Sure. So it's not a mistake to approve it now. Within the agreement, the other thing that we negotiated was that we would no longer have this auto renewal. So this has a defined term through 2024, allowing us to issue that RFP. Make sure, and it could be that Paymentus is the best for the city, but if it's not, we'd like to have the option to make that change. So that's one of the things that we made sure was in this new agreement, is that we could terminate in 2024 without this auto renewal that's currently been happening.
Can you describe in general what's involved with changing payment processors? Do we have to ensure that they are able to talk to our computer systems, or what kind of technical issues may arise from that?
Yes, I will, because that's actually what we're dealing with right now on the billing system conversion. So we are, right now, Paymentus is trying to talk to Silverblaze, which Silverblaze is providing the customer portal, so that will be available once the new system is live. Those two systems need to talk to each other. So there's other gateway providers out there that seamlessly have integrated. It seems like we just have a little bit of a challenge that Paymentus and Silverblaze aren't quite integrating the way we had planned. So Paymentus has put a lot of work into it. That's why we would like to issue the RFP early in 2024, so that there is time to prepare and get those systems talking to each other.
Thank you.
Member Russell.
Thank you. So the new software, is it the software that we purchased in 2020 that will bill for everything the city could think of billing for? We paid $1.2 million for the software. And so is that what we're still working on getting up?
Yes, so that is for the utility billing. So the water, the sewer, the concrete, and the stormwater. So it's not anything that the city could think of. It's just utility-based and sewer fund, stormwater.
But if the city decided at some later point we wanted to bill for broadband or all kinds of other things, trash.
If we wanted to do that through the utility bill, then yes, we could add that.
Because of the software that we purchased, right?
It's because of that, and that's the Cogsdale software. So that is not Paymentus. That's not the software that we're talking about tonight, but that is Cogsdale, yes.
Right, so that is, Paymentus is a bridge till we get to that? Or is it possible they will still work with us even after the software is fully implemented?
Yes, so we will need Paymentus or a similar firm that provides the payment gateway services, no matter what. So with the new system, we need Paymentus to talk to that system in order to take the online payments and the automated phone payments.
Okay, and so is it normal for it to have taken this long to get that software going, since we approved it in 2020 and it won't be 2024? Is that normal?
We're hoping it's 2024. We're hoping it's early 2024. So we are in kind of our final stages of the go live process. It's just this final piece of getting Paymentus to talk to Silverblaze, and then doing a mock go live, which we are hoping to do before the end of the year, and then going live with the system in early 2024.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just add to that. What we're hearing, and this is kind of unfortunate, is that I would say that this is not normal, but it is somewhat normal, in the sense that when we have reached out to talked to other entities who've done a major billing conversion software, there's always the original schedule that's developed, and then it gets delivered significantly later than what it was originally anticipated. This project is significantly delayed. A lot of that is on the, we think is on the challenges in the implementation that weren't necessarily completely understood at the time that the contract was originally let. And so the thing that we don't want to do with this is implement it unless it's 100% right, because we're talking about people's bills. And as we get through another issue that goes wrong, and Sarah has been dealing with this since the day she started, is trying to get this project over the finish line with the vendor. The vendor team has completely turned over. Every single person on the vendor team, with the exception of I think one, is a new person on the project. And so that causes delay in the project. We have been very cognizant of costs through this. I have fairly regular meetings with the president of this company to make sure that they understand that our needs need to be met in terms of when we roll this thing out, it needs to be right. And so this is where we're not rushing it in order to make sure it's right. Probably the last 9 months has been trying to get Silver Blaze and Cogsdale and Paymentus to talk to each other. So these softwares just have problems, and you have 3 different vendors that are all needed because they do a specific thing, but because you're talking about one type of software, proprietary software, talking to another type of proprietary software, this is what bogs these projects down, and what we're learning when we talk to other people who are having these same challenges. So is it normal? No, I would say it's not normal, but we're also experiencing the same kind of frustrations that I've heard other people experience.
And so have we paid them the 1.2 million, and do we continue to pay them?
So my understanding on this, and I'll have to go back and we can probably get the actuals on this. The original contract, I believe, was $1 million. There was a $75,000 travel component to it, which we've used a fair amount of because we bring the programmers on site, and so they fly in for a week and they'll work on site with our staff and with our IT staff. I don't believe we've expended that full $75,000 even over the course of this entire project. So we've been very diligent in ensuring that we don't spend too much of that. We did agree to I believe it was a $75,000, is that right? $75,000 change order that we made them provide us backup for, because the original way they presented it was a one-page thing that said, we think we're over budget, we need this amount of money, and it took us 7 months to get the backup for it, but we finally got detailed backup, because I said, we're not gonna approve anything until you tell us where this is our responsibility to pay for. So when we looked at the full amount of that change order, which we have that record, we went line item by line item, whose responsibility it was, and essentially agreed to de-scope part of that original amount and then pay $75,000 more for things that were legitimately issues on our end, whether it be because the scope wasn't fully understood or whatever. That total amount was between the reassigning scope was $50,000. The change order amount was $75,000 for a total of essentially $125,000 that we contributed. They contributed $125,000 because we ultimately deemed, based on everything, based on our records and their records, that it was about a 50-50 responsibility in terms of things that were their fault because their staffing level changed or they weren't managing the project right or whatever. But we do have very detailed documentation of that, because I didn't want to just say, yes, we'll just approve more. And then when I approved that one, I said, this is the change order we're gonna be okay with. Well, I didn't approve it, it's not within my authority. It was within city manager's authority. But once we agreed to that, I said, this is the change order, and we're not doing another one until this thing implements. So unless there's some remarkable thing that we aren't foreseeing, that, if there's a legitimate thing that we weren't foreseeing, That's the only additional contribution to the project that we're making. So that would put the total project price at $1,075,000, and then the $75,000 in travel that we haven't fully expended.
Okay, so we already have put out the $1 million.
Well, no, we're still, we bill based on completion. So so they can't bill us for until they've completed a segment of the billing. So we haven't paid the full amount yet, but according to the schedule of how we pay for it, when they complete the task amount, then we'll pay that amount of the contract. So I don't know how much is left. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, this is your idea.
I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm happy to get those to you. The other thing is that there's a phase 2 to this. So there were some additional options that we had put in the scope that we wanted to implement for the new billing system to add some automation, to really add some efficiencies for the billing staff. So there's a reserved amount of funding for that, that's under that $1 million for that phase 2. So that has not been touched either, has not been started. That is after this go live timing that we will then implement phase 2.
Okay, I appreciate that. I appreciate all the answers to those questions because that is a lot of money that we've spent for that and we're still waiting on it. And I know it doesn't totally apply to this, but it was an opportunity to ask these questions. And thank you. It would be great to just see some figures on that.
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any further questions from members of council? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve 11C3?
So moved.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. Could I get a second?
Second.
Thank you, Member Russell. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson.
Aye.
Member Noonan Camp.
Aye.
Member Kolnick.
Aye.
Member Russell.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward.
Aye.
Member Woodward.
Aye.
Mayor Sierra.
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much, Deputy Director, and Director Van Rye as well. Moving on to 11C4, we're now to the 2023 City of Englewood Strategic Plan for Q3. I know that you just provided an update to Q2 just a few weeks back. Here is Deputy City Manager Tim Dodd.
Thank you, Mayor. I was going to say you all may be wondering why I'm back so soon with this. This one's actually on time. It's only a few weeks after the end of the third quarter. The other one was a bit delayed, though, because of the many things you had on your plate over the last few months. So I'm glad, though, that we're back on track and using the new format that you saw. So I will be going through it relatively quickly. And then, of course, I'm happy to take any questions that you may have. There's 138 total projects now. There were some duplicates that were removed. So the same amount, although the projects are a little bit different, are delayed this time as were last time, 10%. As you remember, though, last time for quarter 2, we had about 10% that were completed. Now we're up to 24%, and then the remainder, 66%, are still in progress. I'll talk more about some of the projects that are delayed, but in answering Member Noonenkamp's question last time, I did this a couple weeks ago, the majority of them are in our infrastructure and transportation area, and they're due to the lack of a traffic engineer that you thankfully included funding for in the 2024 budget. So we're hoping Deputy Director Hose has been chipping away as he's been able to, along with our contracted traffic engineer. But we're really hoping that some of those projects will come into fruition early in 2024. So again, this is organized by outcome area. So there are 7. Sorry, I'm having a little issue with this. So in community well-being, there were only a few projects that were completed last time. You see this list has expanded tremendously. So there are several projects that have been completed in this area. Sorry. Having a little trouble advancing this. There's 2 delayed projects in this area. One is to prepare for the parks facilities bond that you're all aware of, that being delayed. And then also developing a budget of funds for placemaking initiatives. This is something that is in progress, but we're marking it as delayed just because it is a complex multi-department project that we are working towards, and it will take a little bit more time to see that into fruition. And I don't know if Deputy City Clerk, if you're able to kind of advance for me, this isn't working for some reason. Thank you. Thanks. I'll just let you know in the next slide. Thank you very much. So to highlight a project in community well-being, it was our Homelessness Connect event. This was actually the brainchild of our former open space manager, Dave Lee. He brought it to our attention, one of our internal homelessness action team meetings a couple years ago, and it's now going strong in our third year. So I'd like to thank our director of that department, Christina Underhill, as well as Adrian Torres, Tim Holt, and many others that make this a reality. This program has really two purposes. One is to kind of highlight for the community some of the things that our nonprofit service providers in the city are all doing collectively to help people experiencing homelessness. But then the more important reason is to help people who are experiencing homelessness. So we had over 40 service providers there this year. It's in Cushing Park. We had 135 participants. Again, the organizations vary tremendously, everything from the Veteran Services Administration to a local barber doing haircuts to a local vet taking care of animals belonging to people experiencing homelessness. So it's a very successful event that we're very proud of. Next slide, please. So in governance, which is our next outcome area, we have a few completed projects here. One that's focused in finance on some of the reporting requirements they have to do. The one delayed project is something that we've been wanting to do for a while, which is essentially to incentivize innovative thought among departments, ideas for process improvement and things like that. It wouldn't be grants to individuals, it would be grants to departments. You know, if a department came to us and said, okay, we'd like to do this innovative idea, it would cost $2,000. So we hope to be able to bring that into fruition soon. Next slide, please. So project highlight here is our policy review and education. This has come a long way in the last couple years, mainly under Director of Human Resources Sean Weisky, as well as our City Attorney's Office and Vicki McDermott, as well as many other departments that participate. Originally, this was a program that was just done by a select group of directors. Now it involves rank and file employees across the city in 7 different departments. This is to review the policies that we have on the city. These are administrative policies for employees. 8 policies have been reviewed so far in 2023. We've worked to streamline this process. It's been pretty successful. We've also gotten quite a bit of input from employees on the policies as we develop them. Next slide, please. The economy section, we have a few folk projects, which you're probably all aware of, that have been completed. These are all things that are also tied to our economic development strategic plan. Next slide, please. Here I'd like to highlight the economic development website. So as you're probably aware, as we redeveloped our city website, we do allow in certain cases for microsites, like the library, for example, launched one about a month or so ago, thanks to Lucia Magnuson in our communications department. We also have one for economic development. This is it's meant to be a resource. It was a key portion of our economic development strategic plan. It's again meant to be a resource for businesses that want to stay in Englewood or expand in Englewood, or businesses that are not in Englewood that want to come to Englewood, or new businesses that want to be created in Englewood. It involves a variety of different things, grant programs, there's listing of properties and things like that, as well as a library of videos that our communication team helps with to help promote local businesses in Englewood. Next slide, please. Infrastructure and transportation, we have one project that's been marked complete, which is the South Platte Renew plan. It's the master plan, started in 2019. There are a few delayed projects, or several delayed projects, in this section that I've articulated at the beginning of my report. As I mentioned, these are primarily all related to transportation safety, and they're pretty much all tied to the lack of having a traffic engineer. Next slide, please. You see on this next slide a few others, and again, these are all grouped in the same area. Next slide, please. And this is to highlight, so obviously South Platte Renew being a joint venture doesn't have too many projects in their strategic plan, but the one that they do is their master plan. And so it's one that you all heard about, I believe on August 16th of this year when you had your joint meeting with the city of Littleton. So I wanted to highlight some of the culture work that they do, as well as a part of that. So you see here their mission, vision, and values statements. And tomorrow, Deputy Director Sfoco and I will actually be presenting on mission, vision, and values statements at our Supervisory Academy, which is one of the training programs that we've launched this year for about 25 staff members. Next slide, please. So neighborhoods, this is actually, even though you may see only 2 completed projects, there's only, I think, 3, maybe 4 projects in this section, so it's actually a high high percentage of the projects that are in this section have been completed. The holding of the recognition event in Baker Park, and then also starting programs and initiatives to recognize and celebrate different areas of the city. So if you look at the next slide, please, thank you. So one project I want to highlight, we call it celebrating different areas of the city, but it's really two campaigns that are kind of connected, made in Englewood, uniquely Englewood. So there's really a campaign to kind of showcase some of the unique products that are made in Englewood, everything from t-shirts to all kinds of other things made by different businesses. And so it really speaks to our history, our innovative spirit, diverse talent, and entrepreneurial drive. And so this includes a registry of Made in Englewood businesses, as well as a grant program on the success that allows businesses to promote and sell their Englewood-made products outside the city. That was something that we launched a few months ago as a joint effort between our communications department, neighborhood resources program, and our economic development department. Next slide, please. Safety, we have several projects actually, and this is again a relatively small area that have been completed. Many of them involve the new goal that you added to the safety area at your retreat in January, involving communications and community engagement involving safety. Next slide, please. Here I wanted to highlight something that you, I believe in late September, you recognized the police department for receiving the Colorado Association of Chiefs of Police accreditation. This is a really important accreditation for the city. It's a very, very comprehensive one that includes site visits and quite a bit of documentation. And it really reviews all of our policies to make sure that the community members of Englewood are receiving excellent police services. Next slide, please. This is our last section, sustainability. We have several projects that were completed here as well in Q2 and some in Q3, I believe. Next slide. Yep, so you see here a few more. There's one that's delayed, but we will be working on that in the next year and hopefully towards the end of this year. And next slide, which I believe is the last one before questions, just to highlight a project. So as you probably know, in May of 2023, the city did adopt the 2021 International Energy Conservation Code from the International Code Council. And this sets minimum efficiency standards for new construction. So it allows for new buildings to be solar ready and new single family residential units to be electric ready, which again is a key part of our sustainability efforts. Next slide, please. So that's the report. The next time we'll see this report won't be until the new council is seated in January as part of the retreat. So this is the last time that I'll be presenting this before then.
Thank you, Deputy Director. Any questions for Deputy Director on the strategic plan? All right, go ahead, Member Nunkamp.
First of all, it's just so wonderful to hear all of the work that's happening, so many important projects and what you listed. I have a question actually about the slides. It's a slightly different slide format and presentation than what you showed us last time. Can you talk about the consistency and how we think about how we show this information, and then also what I found even out of the last time that you spoke, so helpful for us to have it. Also, how are we sharing this information out to the public?
Absolutely. So what Member Nunenkamp is referring to is when I presented this last time, the slides kind of had a graphic that was developed by our communications department. Those graphics for Q2 will soon be put on the city's website. Because of the timing with this, that it was only a few weeks from the end of the quarter until now, I did not have the time to work with the communications department for this presentation. However, I have them all queued up to send to them this week, and so the idea is that they will be developing them to look in lockstep with the ones that were for Q2, and those will be presented on the city's strategic planning website. So we do have all of our reports every quarter going back to 2020 on the website, as well as our performance dashboard with our performance metrics and metric descriptions and data, as well as the actual strategic plan.
That's super helpful, and totally heard on the design. I think what I appreciated also about those slides is the inclusion of the KPIs and some of the photos and the additional information that I think rounds out the presentation. And I'm still continually struck by how many citizens who don't realize that we have a strategic plan of how we steward taxpayer resources and how we drive focus of time and energy and talent. And so anything we can do to share this information through our magazine, through our social channels, I think is just really powerful because it shows what taxpayer dollars are going toward and how the city is running. And I think it's a good story to tell.
Absolutely, thank you. I appreciate that. And yes, in 2020, when the plan was first developed, I think it was mostly through boards and commissions, but we did gather community member input, and then we did it again in 2021. We had things at the library. We did it through Englewood Engage. We had about 100 or so community members weigh in. Certainly something we could talk. We could happily do that again. If you want to make revisions or get more input going into 2024.
Yeah, I think, even, obviously, I think you're right, the input. I'm talking more about quarterly, the same way that we get these updates, giving updates to the citizens, I think is a good idea. That's all.
Thank you so much. Anyone else with any questions for Deputy Director? If not, can I get a motion to approve the strategic plan for Q3?
So moved.
Thank you, Member Noonan. Could I get a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Member Woodward. Any further comments? Seeing none, can we please vote?
Member Anderson?
Aye.
Member Noonan-Camp?
Aye.
Member Kolnick?
Aye.
Member Russell?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Ward?
Aye.
Member Woodward?
Aye.
Mayor Sierra?
Aye.
Let the record show 7 ayes.
Thank you so much, and thank you very much, Deputy City Manager Dodd. And with that, we're moving on to Mayor's Choice. I thought there was a second item I had to speak to tonight, but I will try to make the cocktails with council tomorrow night. It sees from 5 to 7 at Sanitas. I know that my son also has, a teacher's conference tomorrow night. So I'll try to make it after that event, but I will try to see you guys sometime between 5 and 7 tomorrow. Anyone else for council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Woodward.
Yes, I have a question. Will we be rescinding Council Bill number 53, which was the council bill that provided the manager in the event that there was an absence of city council quorum, the ability to do contracts?
I'll go ahead and answer. There's no need to repeal it because it only became effective if and when there was a lack of quorum. And then it was only effective until that was corrected after the election. So because there's no lack of quorum, it doesn't become effective, so there's no reason to repeal.
Very good, thank you.
Anyone else with the council member's choice? Go ahead, Member Russell.
I just have a couple of questions for council request. The first one is a question about the abatement process. Can we get a process for that each individual department follows for the abatement process? Question number one, how many properties are currently in any phase of the abatement process? And question number two, how many properties does the city currently have liens on? And then, is it possible, this council request is going back to public comment on at least the election issue. I know there are issues. If people call to communications department, they can get their address put on, but that's really not okay. If we're spending $80,000, it's maybe even more than that now, for that magazine, it should be delivered to every single household. And so I'd like to know, to research any things that we could do to address that. I know that Councilmember Woodward suggested that postal employees throw things in the trash. They do, but if they do that, if they get caught doing that, they get fired. And I think there are things that the city can do to put pressure on the post office. But at least the election issue, if we could find out what's going on with the post office, I'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, can I ask a follow-up?
Yes, go ahead, City Manager.
On the first one, so are you talking about abatements with regard to like weeds or junk, more code-related?
Right, properties that would be abated for whatever reason, whether it's code enforcement violation or whether community development. I think community development does do some abatement processes also. Is that correct?
Not that I can immediately think of, but we have, well, I should say the building department could, yes.
Okay.
Building and fire prevention both have the ability to abate. So thank you for the clarification.
Okay, thank you.
Member Kolnick?
Yeah, so I know I'm relatively new to this process, but between the Bill 53 you mentioned, my first experience going through budget approval, and then just inflation in general, I wanted to look at what it would take to just increase the contract dollar amount approval that the council has to do to,
Procurement policy.
Review contracts. I think the current threshold's $100,000. So I was looking at a potentially asking city attorney if you could maybe draft an ordinance that the council could, debate for approval or amendment that would consider raising it from probably 100 to like maybe 150. But then also, one thing that I didn't understand during the budget process that from the sounds of the research, why do we look at budget contract approval for a budget that's already been approved, right? So we go through and a lot of our departments are getting their budgets approved, and then we're going through and approving individual contracts. So probably just looking at an ordinance that would, raise the limit and let the council be more efficient. Maybe council can comment on that as well.
Thank you, Member Kolnick. Member Anderson, you want to speak to this?
Yeah, this sounds like something that may be a good study session topic, and I'd be interested in having a study session on it.
Yeah, if a study session is a more appropriate venue, that'd be fine.
Sounds good. Member Nooncamp?
Yeah, I'm happy to have a study session on this as well. I'd particularly be interested to know what other municipalities around us are doing and what kind of contracting authority they give their city managers. We want the right amount of diligence from this body, but then also not to be inefficient or to slow down the work of the city. And so I'm happy to consider if we should look at a change there.
Sounds good. Anyone else want to weigh in? I'll be happy to have this as a study session item. Go ahead, Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, I think the bigger picture answer to Member Kolnick's question as to why individual contracts require approval is because of the way our charter is crafted. So it's a multi-stage process. We approve the budget generally, which says we plan on doing these things. And then we approve individual contracts over a certain amount because this is how we intend to do these things. And so there's a requirement, as I read the charter, for us to approve certain contracts, and that's why we do it.
Okay.
Although we do have significant flexibility, as we recently demonstrated, to adjust the amount that requires council approval. It just happens to be where it's at now. There's no escaping the process of council approval for certain contracts.
Okay, that makes sense.
Member Woodward?
I would be in agreement with having this come back at a study session.
Sounds good. We have a majority at least that would be interested in having the study session item. So we'll make sure we'll get it on the calendar as part of our mayor manager's meeting. Anyone else with council member's choice? If not, city manager's choice.
Thank you, Mayor. Since it's not too late, I'm going to give you a handful of updates. I apologize in advance, but some good things happening and some things that I think are really important to the public that I like to report on. The first, some good things from Parks Rec Library Golf. The Bellevue train is closed for the season, as it always does, but it will reopen. Fingers crossed that it will hang on for the Holiday Express in December. We also got word last week that the Scientific Cultural Facilities District, or SCFD, has awarded the city $27,900 for 2024. That'll really make a lot of our youth programming and some of our arts programming available. The Bates Logan restroom was put into place for the first time that those new pre-made restrooms have been installed. It's the first time that we put it down with no flaws from our contractor. So that project was a little delayed, but this has put us ahead of schedule, nailing that placement. The annual Trunk or Treat event will occur this Saturday at 3 p.m. at the Civic Center parking lot. So hopefully you all and members of the community can come out. Lastly, in Public Works, I want to report on progress on what I think is probably the most resident-traveled street in Englewood, which is Broadway. It's not the most traveled, but I think most of our residents at some point throughout the week are using Broadway. Really proud to report that we've completed the work on Broadway from Hamden back to the south border of the city limits of Bellevue, that area. The street the lines, all the painting on the street is complete. We do want to just make sure the public understands that there is a small section of that section of Broadway where only the travel lanes were repaved. That's because we got a federal grant called Complete Streets that will help us redo a lot of the sidewalks and curbs along Broadway in that section where we only did the travel lanes. So it would have been a real waste of money for us to repave those areas of Broadway that we know are going to get torn up with new curbing next year. So if anybody thinks it looks a little odd in a section of that to not have the entire street paved, that's the reason why. North of Hamden, work has commenced really from Floyd to Yale. Apologize to residents that temperatures have been a little too cold for that asphalt to stick to the pavement, but luckily we warm up to 80 tomorrow, so the pavement folks resume. But that section has been completely milled, meaning that top layer of asphalt has been milled off. One unique feature of this year's paving projects are that we're using all of the millings that we're getting from the streets that we've redone, these corridors and arterials, and we're repurposing that asphalt into our alleys to provide a more stable surface for our alleys, which have been historically dirt or a kind of a road-based material. We think this material is going to hold up a lot better in all weather, in wet weather conditions, and we're excited about the compaction rates we've been able to get in our alleys. We've been asked many times, oh, we didn't know you were going to start paving alleys. Well, it's not actually paving. It's paving material that's being put down. But so far, we've had really good response from our residents about that, and hope to follow the example of a lot of other cities that have been doing this, and hopefully it will hold up well for us. I also just wanted to mention that we do have that we are not paving in the downtown portion of Broadway because they too are looking at streetscape projects that are coming up. They're looking to invest pretty heavily in planning and hopefully implementation in the next year or two for their streetscape, new sidewalks, landscaping, pedestrian amenities, lighting, and things that are going to be going into that section. So we'll be working closely with them on that. But that section of Broadway is actually the most recently repaved and resurfaced. So that is the reason, if anybody is wondering why there's a gap between Floyd and Hamden, that will be done as part of a more complete streetscaping project coming up. Glad to answer any questions about these or other projects. Otherwise, no further report.
Thank you, City Manager. Member Woodward.
Do residents have to request their alley be done, or how is that working out?
Actually, no, but great question, Member Woodward. The way we're doing both our street paving and our alley paving is different this year. We're taking a different approach. Public Works Director Rochelle really worked with his team to really study the data that came out of our street assessment. You may remember that last year and the year before that, we've been doing street paving index surveys where a machine goes over the road, it measures the condition of the roadway, and that's what's guiding where we're spending the money. So instead of kind of the old system of we're going to do all the streets in one section of the city, then the next year, the next section, then the next year, the next section, and just kind of rotate 4 times, we're actually looking at what streets and alleys are the worst condition, and we're doing those first so that we're always really staying on top of the areas before they degrade too much by always addressing worse first. So the alley is similar, although we don't use that machine. That's a visual inspection that our public works staff have undertaken. They are driving those alleys and really making those determinations. We also look at alleys that we have known water standing in, because that water standing, either after a snow or a big rain event, is what really deteriorates that road base when it's traveled on, especially by the heavier trucks. So it's all being based on data and observation in the alleys and data on the streets, rather than just kind of a shotgun approach of we're going to do this section of the city this year. Mayor, I apologize. I did forget one very important piece of information that I wanted to report on, and that is that the EAF Board had their last meeting recently, and I'd like to ask Deputy City Manager Dodd to just briefly report on that and the transfer of properties.
Sure, thank you, City Manager. So first, I would actually like to thank my two other EAF members, Director Christina Underhill and Director Jackie Lowe, for their service. This has been quite an experience, but I think it's one that we're all very happy to give by the wayside. So a couple things that are left. One is that the EAF Board resigned as the maintenance director of the CAM on August 2nd. We had to give 90-day notice, so that goes into effect on November 2nd. Then the CAM met this summer, so there were a few different CAM participants. A motion was made by LNR Properties and seconded by Art Walk City to name the city of Englewood as the next property maintenance director for this property. That goes into effect on November 3rd. So we have had a few internal meetings to plan for that. We are going to be issuing an RFP to select a third-party vendor for property management. However, in the meantime, Director Rochelle and the facilities team has developed a protocol and a process to be managing the vendors as we get into our snow season. We really do hope to have a property manager in place by the beginning of the next year. The last thing I want to mention too is the EAF property is gone. The maintenance director responsibilities are about to be gone. The only thing that will be left is EAF as a nonprofit, and so we are working with our contracted attorney, Attorney Michael Miller, on a few filings we need to do with the Secretary of State's office and the IRS to disincorporate. We really can't do those until after we are officially no longer the maintenance director, but he is aware of those, and we are working to have those in place as soon after the fact as we can in early November. So that's the status update on that.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Dodd, on that update. Any questions on that? One last thing I forgot to mention as well. I don't think this council needs to take action on this, but I meant to make it a part of my mayor's choice. We do need to add a study session item, or I'd like to see us add a study session item at that time for that new council to look at our social media policies. I've had questions from members of the public on why we don't always respond to social media posts, especially on Nextdoor. And so I think it would just be a good refresher on why we're not doing that regularly within the city. Part of the reason is the fact that we don't have access to all the zones within Nextdoor, so we don't have the ability to see every single post. But it just would be a good refresher for the next council to potentially look at that item. Anything else? I saw a light go on, but I guess not. And with that, that adjourns tonight's meeting. I'll see you guys all next week. Have a good evening.